I'm Natalie Brooks, I'm 33 years old. And if someone had told me a year ago that a little girl's future would end up resting in my hands instead of her own blood relatives, I would have laughed and told them they were watching too many courtroom dramas. Then my best friend died. Not all at once. Not in some dramatic accident. Cancer took Emily one quiet piece at a time until there wasn't enough of her left to fight. The last real conversation we had happened in her hospital room in Portland, Oregon. Rain tapped softly against the window while her 8-year-old daughter, Lily, slept curled up in the chair beside us with a coloring book still open on her lap. Emily reached for my hand. "Natalie," she whispered, "promise me something." I told her she didn't have to ask. She shook her head. "No, you have to promise before I say it." I smiled, trying to hide how terrified I already was. "I promise." Her eyes drifted toward Lily. "When I'm gone, don't let them take her." I frowned. "Them?" Emily's fingers tightened around mine with surprising strength. "My family." I stared at her, waiting for an explanation that never came. "They'll come back when there's something to gain." I wanted to tell her she was imagining things. That grief and medication were making her paranoid. But the look in her eyes stopped me. It wasn't fear. It was certainty. Emily passed away 12 days later. At the funeral, her parents cried louder than anyone else. Her younger brother hugged. Strangers like he'd lost his favorite person in the world. None of them had visited her during the 6 months. I spent driving her to chemotherapy appointments. None of them had been there when Lily woke up screaming after another nightmare. None of them had answered Emily's calls. But suddenly, they were everywhere. I thought they were grieving. I was wrong. 3 days after the funeral, an attorney asked me to come to his office for the reading of Emily's final wishes. I walked in expecting paperwork. Instead, every member of Emily's family was already sitting around the conference table, staring at me like I had just stolen something that belonged to them. The room went completely silent when I stepped inside. Emily's mother, Diane, looked me up and down with the same cold expression she'd worn every time we crossed paths over the last 10 years. Her younger brother, Kyle, wouldn't even look at me. He kept tapping his fingers on the polished oak table like he was impatient for the meeting to end. The attorney introduced himself as Mr. Hansen and asked everyone to take a seat. I chose the chair closest to the door. Something about the atmosphere didn't feel like a family mourning a daughter. It felt like people waiting for a business transaction. Mr. Hansen opened a thick folder. "This document was signed 8 months ago," he said. "Emily requested that it remain confidential until after her passing." Diane leaned forward immediately. "So the house goes to the family, correct?" The attorney didn't answer her. Instead, he continued reading. "Emily Carter appoints Natalie Brooks as the sole legal guardian of her minor daughter, Lily Carter." For a second, I honestly thought I'd heard him wrong. Every face in the room turned toward me. Kyle actually laughed. "That's ridiculous." Diane's chair scraped loudly across the floor as she stood. "There has to be some mistake. We're Lily's family." Mr. Hansen calmly slid another signed document across the table. "There is no mistake." My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. Emily had never told me she'd already completed the paperwork. She'd only asked me to promise. Now I understood why. Before anyone could say another word, the attorney reached for a second envelope. "There is one additional matter." The room became quiet again. Emily's older sister crossed her arms, suddenly paying much closer attention. Mr. Hansen adjusted his glasses. Emily maintained a life insurance policy, retirement accounts, investment funds, and the proceeds from the sale of a commercial property inherited from her late grandfather. He paused just long enough for everyone to lean in. "The total estimated estate value is approximately $900,000. It was like all the air disappeared from the room. Diane's expression changed first. The tears she'd worn since the funeral were suddenly gone. Kyle stopped pretending to be angry and started looking directly at the attorney. No one asked about Lily. No one asked what Emily had wanted. The only question Diane whispered was, "Who controls the money?" And in that exact moment, I finally understood what Emily had tried to warn me about in that hospital room. Mr. Hansen didn't answer Diane right away. Instead, he opened the final envelope Emily had left behind. I was instructed to read this letter only after everyone became aware of the estate. A chill ran through me. He unfolded the pages and began reading in Emily's voice. If my family is asking about the money before they ask about Lily, they've just proven exactly why I'm writing this. No one spoke. Natalie, if you're hearing this, thank you for keeping your promise. You were there for every chemo appointment, every sleepless night, every terrified phone call. My relatives had years to be part of Lily's life. They chose not to. I could feel my eyes burning. Across the table, Diane's face turned pale. Everything I own belongs to Lily. Every dollar is to be held in a protected trust until she's an adult. Natalie will serve as both Lily's legal guardian and the trustee. She may use the money only for Lily's health, education, home, and future. Kyle slammed his hand on the table. This is insane, Mr. Hansen calmly continued. To anyone thinking about challenging my decision, understand this wasn't made out of anger. It was made after years of disappointment, broken promises, and watching my daughter become invisible to people who only remembered us when money was involved. The room felt smaller with every sentence. Diane suddenly looked at me, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. Natalie, maybe we got off on the wrong foot over the years. It was such a dramatic change that it almost would have been believable. Almost. Because just minutes earlier, she'd never once asked where Lily was. She only wanted to know who controlled $900,000. And now, she wanted me on her side. I had a feeling this wasn't the end of the fight. It was only the beginning. The first lawsuit arrived. 9 days later, I wasn't surprised. Mr. Hansen, called before the process server even, reached my front porch. Diane has filed a petition challenging both the guardianship and Emily's estate plan, he said. We expected this. I looked across the living room where Lily sat on the floor, carefully building a cardboard castle for her stuffed animals. She hadn't smiled much since losing her mom, but she smiled when she was with me. That alone told me I was exactly where Emily wanted me to be. Over the next several weeks, everything became a battle. Diane suddenly wanted weekly visits. Kyle insisted Lily deserved to grow up with her real family, relatives I'd never met before started posting on social media about how I had manipulated a dying woman. People who had ignored Emily for years were now calling themselves devastated grandparents, devoted siblings, and loving aunts. None of them mentioned the trust. None of them mentioned the $900,000, but somehow every conversation eventually found its way back to it. Fortunately, Emily had planned for that. Too, Mr. Hansen invited me back to his office one afternoon. Have something Emily instructed me to hold until it became necessary. He placed a small flash drive on the desk. Necessary. For what? He gave me a sympathetic smile for exactly what's happening now. Inside the drive were dozens of dated videos Emily had recorded during her treatments. Some lasted only a minute, others stretched nearly half an hour. In every single one, she spoke clearly and calmly. She explained why she chose me. She described the birthdays her parents skipped, the holidays they canceled, the promises they broke. She even held up printed phone records showing months of unanswered calls after her diagnosis. Then she looked directly into the camera. If anyone says Natalie manipulated me, they're lying. This was my decision, made while I was fully competent. I want Lily raised by the person who already proved she loves her without expecting anything in return. I sat there fighting back tears. Emily knew this fight was coming. She had prepared evidence. Before anyone else even realized there would be one, the court hearing finally arrived 3 weeks later. Diane's attorney argued that blood relatives should always come before friends. He repeated the phrase, best interests of the child, so many times I almost stopped hearing it. Then, Mr. Hansen quietly handed the judge Emily's videos. The courtroom lights dimmed as the first recording appeared on the screen. No dramatic music, no rehearsed speech, just Emily, wearing a knit cap after chemotherapy, looking straight into the camera. By the time the final video ended, the courtroom was completely silent. Even Diane couldn't meet anyone's eyes. For the first time since Emily died, I realized something important. She hadn't spent her final months preparing to leave this world. She'd spent them making sure Lily would never be abandoned the way she had once been. The judge didn't speak right away. He spent several quiet minutes reviewing Emily's handwritten letters, the trust documents, and the recordings she'd made during her treatment. Finally, he looked toward Diane and her attorney. "I have no evidence that Ms. Carter was pressured or manipulated," he said. "What I do have is overwhelming evidence that she made a thoughtful, informed decision based on the best interests of her daughter." He turned toward me. "The court recognizes Natalie Brooks as Lily Carter's legal guardian. The trust established for Lily shall remain exactly as written." Just like that, it was over. Diane closed her eyes. Kyle muttered something under his breath as they walked out of the courtroom, without saying a single word to Lily. Not goodbye. Not "we'll miss you." Nothing. Lily slipped her small hand into mine. "Does this mean I get to come home with you?" I smiled through tears. "You've been home with me all along." 8 months later, we planted a flowering dogwood tree in my backyard. Emily had always loved dogwood blossoms because she said they reminded her that beautiful things could survive difficult seasons. Lily placed a small painted stone beneath the tree. It read simply, "Love never leaves." Today she's thriving in school, making friends, and laughing the way every child deserves to laugh. The trust is still protected, exactly as Emily wanted. It'll be there for Lily's education, her dreams, and whatever future she chooses to build. Sometimes people ask whether I regret taking on such an enormous responsibility. My answer never changes. Emily didn't leave me $900,000. She trusted me with something infinitely more valuable. She trusted me with her daughter. And every single day, I do my best to prove that she made the right choice. If there's one thing this journey taught me, it's that family isn't defined by who shares your last name. It's defined by who stays when everyone else walks away.